So our first speaker today is Victor Stagnaro. He's the Chief Executive Officer of the National Fallen Firefighters Foundation. He's worked for Prince George County Fire and Emergency Medical Services in Maryland for 25 years before joining the NFFF in 2010 as the Director of all the fire service programs. In his role now, he's worked on initiatives, in particular preventing firefighter fatality. He was promoted to Managing Director in 2018, leading the organization's day-to-day. And then in June of 23, he was selected as the foundation CEO. So Victor, like all of you, is extremely passionate about what he does. He gets around the world, around the country, but he's always our advocate. He's always firefighters' advocate. I've known Victor for a while now, and we've had a chance to sit down and talk, and I can't say enough about the value of the National Fallen Firefighters collaboration with the North American Fire Training Directors. Again, the synergy that occurs when passionate people work together to achieve goals that are mutually beneficial. Our goal is to train firefighters so they are safer. Victor's goal is to end firefighter injury and fatality. What better combination, and I shouldn't just say Victor's, it's the National Fallen Firefighters, but what better combination of goals coming together to do better, to make the fire ground safer, to make the training ground safer, to reduce those statistics that we hate to hear about every single year. I think Victor is a visionary leader in firefighter health and safety. I know that he is fully committed, all in on his mission, and I know that this is his commitment in life, not just in front of an audience, but every single day. And Victor, I thank you for being with us today, and I really look forward to your comments.
Thank you for quite an introduction. Thank you for your leadership. Thanks for the opportunity. Thank you for the tribute this morning to remember our fallen heroes. It's one of the great virtues and values of the fire service, which I'm so proud to be part of. You know, when Ken called and asked if I would be the keynote, first thing I said was, "You've heard me speak before, right?" And then I realized that probably the 4 or 5 people he asked before couldn't get their passports in time, because I should have known when he said, first thing he asked was, "Do you have a valid passport?" So I think it kind of went. But no, I'm really grateful for Ken's leadership and for the North American Fire Training Directors. You know, when I joined the fire service back in the early 80s, I knew there was going to be a danger component to it, and I think that's still true. I think every firefighter that steps into a firehouse, fills out an application, they understand that there's a certain amount of danger involved with being a firefighter, and that's not lost on me. And I think that's probably what, in some cases, what drew us to the job or the volunteering, because it is a certain element of danger. When my kids were little, we were planning a rock climbing event, and one of the moms in one of the ends of the hallway, she says, "Well, if you have to wear a helmet, maybe it's not worth doing." One of the other moms on the other side says, "In my family, if you're not wearing a helmet, it's only worth doing if you have to wear a helmet." And so, of course, everybody wants to hang out with that family. So there's a certain amount of danger that we understand. But you know, when you wear a helmet, when you wear your PPE, it's not a reminder of how dangerous this job is. It's meant to help us face that challenge with courage and understanding that that's here to protect us. So when we wear that gear, that's the reminder. And when we have the training and what you do every single day, it teaches us how to use those tools with skill, with judgment, so we can do the job to go home. You know, Jim, yesterday, he talked about why we're here. We're here to train firefighters. And I got to thinking about that question, why we're here. And that's training firefighters is what you do. Why you do it could be lots of different answers. Some of them could be, this is what the taxpayers ask us to do. Some of it might be because we want to prepare that firefighter to better serve their community. As I sat in the way back over there, my thought was the why you do it is so that I have fewer firefighters to honor and fewer families to serve. And that's extraordinarily important. In 2018, under the leadership of Chief Denny Compton, who was our board chair at the time, we brought cancer, added cancer to our criteria for a fallen firefighter. That was visionary. That was the right thing to do. In 2022, public safety officer benefits in the U.S. added suicide under certain circumstances to be honored at the National Fallen Firefighters Foundation. Those changes, they're not like lithium batteries and other things that we're facing and the changes that we're facing in the fire service. These were acknowledgments of realities of things we just didn't know before. We've gotten better at recognizing the dangers, and they're not always on the fire ground. Occupational cancer, cardiac events, post-traumatic stress. We've named them, but now we have to learn how to defeat them. Every fire service organization understands the dangers firefighters face. I would argue that no organization knows that better than the National Fallen Firefighters Foundation and the Canadian Fallen Firefighters Foundation. The First Responder Center for Excellence, which is an affiliate of the National Fallen Firefighters Foundation, as well as the foundation itself, are working diligently to try to prevent line-of-duty deaths and injuries. We have online training and all kinds of things, but one of the things we don't want to do is get in the way of what you do. We want to collaborate, we want to come alongside it, and we want to learn how we can better support your efforts because your efforts are supporting ours. Across the fire service, the evolution of training has occurred over the past century. Many of that is during our own lifetimes. It reflects the work of leaders and trainers who refuse to accept the way we have always done it. And yet we still lose firefighters, whether it's apparatus ejections, structural collapse, cardiac events that were detectable and preventable, to cancers that can be reduced, and post-traumatic stress. About a year ago, a little bit over a year ago, we revisited the 16 firefighter life safety initiatives. At the NFFF and FRCE, we are aligning our efforts around 4 pillars that have emerged across the fire service that you will hear more about. In fact, we have some copies of that report. You're getting a sneak peek of it. It hasn't been released publicly, but it's the 20th Anniversary Firefighter Life Safety Summit, and if you have a QR code nearby, you can download that through the QR code. It hasn't been released to the public, but it's out there for you, because I know that North American Fire Training Directors was with us in Cincinnati a year and a half ago to help support our review of those initiatives. The 4 pillars that we're talking about are survival, culture, and leadership. Our focus here is to foster a culture of survival. In fact, the chief from Edmundston, he much more eloquently spoke about the things I wanted to talk about this morning. Health and wellness is yet another one of those pillars that we have to focus on. Training and competency totally fits into what you do every single day. Firefighters' safety is deeply tied to the effective training from understanding the evolving threats. When I was a young lieutenant in the Prince George's County Fire Department, we used to try to get that burned building as hot as we could foolishly. And we were of a culture of got to feel the heat. And it was just such a foolish thing that we did, looking back on that now. But I also had a chief at the time, Chief Steve Edwards, another member of this very illustrious group when he was overseeing MIFRE. And one of the things he said as chief of the department before he became the director of the Maryland Fire Rescue Institute, he said every successful vehicle extrication, every successful rescue ties back to that firefighter's training. That firefighter should look back and express his gratitude to the mentors, the officers, and the instructors. And every time there's a medal given, Every instructor owns a little piece of that medal. So you should know that as an instructor. The last of those pillars is government and community. We know how effective firefighting safety requires the support of the community. We heard it here yesterday. Firefighters are voters, and no one knows better than you, as you deal with your own state or municipal training budgets, how important it is to have that community and local government support. Woven across the 4 pillars are 3 key elements that create the firefighter environment. Firefighter well-being, that's directly supporting and improving firefighters' experiences, safety, and well-being. Practices and standards, developing and implementing standardized practices, and organizational capacity. There's some things the fire service just cannot do, and we need to understand that. Firefighting is dangerous work. We know that. We run towards the danger to help others while everybody's running away. The true cost of a line of duty death can never be truly captured. It's the empty chair at the dinner table, it's the spouse and the family grieving, and a child growing up without a parent. It's the silence at the firehouse, or that boisterous laughter of that firefighter. I know there's everyone in this room knows somebody whose name is etched on a bronze wall in Emmitsburg, Maryland. There's no higher calling than serving one's community as a firefighter, but behind every badge there's life, and every life matters. So I have the great opportunity to be what I consider the world's most best trainers, instructors for the fire service right here. So rather than just me speaking for the rest of the time that I have, I want to learn. So I've asked a couple of people with Ken's help to come up, and we're going to do a quick panel discussion so that I can learn more. So I'd like to ask Carol Reed from Oklahoma, John Cunningham from Halifax, and Lisa Pine from Colorado to come up and be part of a panel discussion that I'm going to try to facilitate to the best of my ability here. So if you all would come up, I want to thank you for the work you do as they're coming up. The lives you save will never make the news. Thank you for standing with the National Fallen Firefighters Foundation. I want to add, too, that I speak on behalf of David Sheen from the Canadian Fallen Firefighters Foundation. We were on the cover of Crackle magazine, a Canadian magazine made right here in Canada. And thanks to our friends at Crackle, David Sheen and I were able to meet. We have a great relationship, and I know I speak on his behalf when I say thank you to everyone in the room for all the work that you do to save the lives of firefighters. So with that, I want to start with our panel. So if you would, just very quickly, just tell us your name, who you're with. I assume everybody may know you, but maybe not, so just go from there.
Good morning, I'm Lisa Pine. I'm the State Fire Training Director for the state of Colorado.
John Cunningham, I'm the Executive Director of the Nova Scotia Firefighter School and the past president of NFFF.
I'm Caroline Reed. I'm the Director of Oklahoma State University Fire Service Training.
Thank you to the panel for your willingness to support my efforts here today. So I've got a few questions, some of them I've shared. I've got a few curveballs that I haven't shared just to make you think. So John, let me start with you. The fire service training has evolved to include meeting the demands for long-term firefighter survival and well-being. How would you describe that?
I think it's slowly evolving. We're trying to push that boulder uphill as we try and adapt and change that training mindset that we have to include more in what we do with the training. And the challenge tends to be that the basic level training is growing and growing and growing all the time, so it's hard to encompass in that. We have to try and do it as add-ons, extra training, and resources like yours, your online platforms to help with that, and the outreach programs where you send people out. That's where we're getting most of that training now, I think, instead of in the basic training.
Thank you. Carol, what are the biggest challenges you're facing in teaching recruits about the invisible risks? We're doing a great job, and actually the number of trauma deaths is way down, but cancer, PTSD is growing. How are we reaching that, and what are your biggest challenges in teaching about those elements?
I think some of those biggest challenges is compression. You have to show them that you need to protect yourself, you also have to give them the tools. And we do a lot with peer development, we do a lot with integrated cardiovascular systems and all that kind of stuff. But we've got to come up with those nuggets that when your mind's, like on mental health, when your mind goes off, what are actual tools that we can give them to use at that time? We've worked with, Oklahoma State's worked a wellness program a few years ago, and we worked with some mental health specialists to actually provide those tools, and it's made a difference at that point. And the peer groups that we support through Oklahoma also use those tools and use the 5 or 6 minute basically breathing tools, stress management tools, and those types of things to get them to the point where they can get in to see a therapist. Because one of the issues that we have, and I think the rest of the United States has, is there's not a lot of therapists with this specific trade to deal with public safety as a whole and deal with mental health. So our peer groups are getting them to the point where we're engaging with them, we're helping them, but then there's this huge break before they can actually go to mental health providers and get official long-term strategies to deal with those issues. And we're trying to close those gaps. And the same with cardiovascular. You'll see, we had heart issues for a long time, but now you're seeing, you don't see donuts at a trade school. They provide health care. There's a lot of our Swift Water guys, a lot of those guys are vegetarians, and we're doing a high proteins and all this kind of stuff, and whey, and the food that's provided and how we're doing in firehouse meals is changing. So you're seeing the culture change and pick up and be a healthier deal. So that's how we've strategized, is the culture has changed with cardiovascular. And the cancer issue, the PFAS, we're also working with gear washing. You've seen that over the last, 5 or 10 years. Everybody's got an extractor. One of our AFG grants was for a mobile extractor. We're sitting it out in the counties and washing gear. Reaching them where they are, and there's nobody better than this group as far as being creative and deal with compression, because we're all getting more and more things to do, and John mentioned it in his response. The Firefighter 1 class used to be 75 hours. Now we're up to, some institutions are up to 200 or 300 hours. And how are they actually going to remember, retain, and use when they go back into that firehouse? And those are the things that we're attempting to do as trainers, is to provide them with not only the Firefighter 1 education and the educational components for the initial academies, but you've got to support those academies with YouTube versions, the monthly training versions. So it's reinstilled. It's not use it once and deliver it in an academy and then go back to the station and then they're not going to use it again. You've got to find a way to embed it in those local volunteer units. And I think that's where we are working hard to do that through Resource Ones and through the J&B LMSs and those types of things, and YouTube videos. We have to reach them where they are. The time is limited.
Thank you. Lisa, I saw you taking some notes. Did you have something you wanted to add to that?
No, I was it just reminded me of a lot of things with what we're doing in Colorado to try to reinforce that message. So for me, when I'm out in the world doing any sort of talking, I always start off at the whole reason we're here is for a long career and a long retirement, to try to explain that the training elements that they're looking at is what's going to get them that long retirement. You don't want to be forced out because of cancer or medical issue or something like that. And trying to normalize that that's what this is all about, everything that we do. From things like we have a firefighter safety and disease prevention grant, and we do a lot of extractors. What we don't have is, Colorado doesn't have a brick and mortar fire school. Most of the Fire One is taught at the local level, and we just go in and do the testing. So we don't have the opportunity to reach them at that level all the time. But if we can reinforce things through our grants, through just out there talking about their career longevity and trying to make sure that that's it, I think that also helps. And then pushing content out as we can.
Thank you. You know, when I first joined, my first day in the firehouse, there was a very seasoned firefighter. I walked in all fresh and ready to go, and the firefighter that he's at the kitchen table, he's got a newspaper, and he just looks at me and doesn't say a word and goes back to it. And I knew it was part of the game. So I know a lot of people were talking about my generation as I was coming up through. Anecdotally, there's a lot of discussion about the new generation. They're not as dedicated. They can't get off their phones. They're whatever it might be. So what are the challenges for our instructors, our new instructors? What are you facing there as you're trying to get instructors to instill these values in the fire service? And I'll ask that kind of whoever wants to go first with that.
Okay. I think you got to reach them where they are. If they're on their phone, then you get your app going, you get your YouTubes going, get your segmented. Their attention span is not what it once was. If you put an instructor up there to do an 8-hour class, good luck, because you're going to lose them sooner rather than later. I think the snippet, hitting the attention piece, I think they're just as intelligent as the older generation. The way we teach them has to be a little bit more savvy. It has to be a little bit more electronically savvy. It's got to, I'm going to read the book at home for these guys. Can you hear me? I think my mic went out. They can read the book at home. They want skills. They want hands-on. And so what we've done is give them the book, give them the tools to do that piece at home, shorten the gap for in-class time, and do skills, and then do refreshers for exams and exam prep. And it seems to be working well. We did 50 firefighter ones last year in my little state, which population-wise, I don't have a whole lot of population. And we're still having about an 85% pass rate, which is really good for our educational state of Oklahoma. So it's doing an audiobook. You know, if the reading isn't as strong in the volunteer, give them an audiobook so they can hear it. The AI readers are out there for E8 and for, I think, Jones and Bartlett, I believe you've got a reader as well. Any of the textbooks that are out there nationally, whatever your preference is, you know, encourage them and show them how in the classroom at that first meeting, because we launch ours. So we do a classroom meeting. This is what we're giving you. Here's how to use the tool. Show them how to use the tool and let them use the tool. But that's kind of how we're doing it. We're bringing it to where they are, because the days of them taking 2 weeks and coming to an academy are very limited.
If I can add just a little bit, I think there's a bit of a misconception with the generation too that, you know, okay, they're just on their phone or they're doing something, but you know what? They're on Google, they're on TikTok, they're researching themselves exactly what it is. You know, when you mention something, they don't understand it. It's not just running away on them. They're sitting there, it's like, okay, and I'm looking it up, and there's a TikTok video of exactly what you've been explaining. It's not just that they're sitting there texting, they're doing something else. I think, you know, so you have to kind of embrace it, like Carol said. You know, use the same technology, get the instructors using that, and showing them where they can find other resources and stuff to help that training. I think the challenge is more getting the older generation of instructors to adapt and sort of embrace that newer technology so that they're reaching the students like they should.
And I would also add that they seem to understand more about the health risks of this job than we did when we started. So you really don't have to do a lot of convincing. I think a lot of times we have to convince the people that are going to be their mentors when they get back to the department than it is the newest firefighters, because they have been brought up in this, cancer's a big deal, mental health is a big deal, and I think we're seeing a shift.
So the National Fallen Firefighters Foundation, we have 275 advocates as of now. I got a chance to sit with Matt Russell from Alabama, who we realized didn't have any advocates. So I'm connecting him with John Kane, who's doing a terrific job in recruiting advocates. We also have local assistant state teams across the country that reach out to a department when a line of duty death occurs. How can we bridge that gap? Is there something that the National Fallen Firefighters Foundation can be doing to support your efforts and the work that you do with the boots on the ground that we have.
I think we just need to get them aware of the resources. We need to know what the resources are, and I have recently learned a lot about what you guys do have, and then getting it out and letting them know what's available so that they can do some of the work on their own to learn some of these skills.
Yeah, I think you do a fantastic job of creating those resources for us and sharing them with us so that we can get them out to who needs them. And I know, as a Canadian, you've done well. You're now partnered with Canadian Fallen Firefighters. We've even had some of your instructors up previously to do some sessions in our area, and graciously let them come up and share those same programs. So handing that off to the academies is vital. I think it helps spreading that message.
I always like to see a pathway to success. So if we've got a problem, if we can integrate with your organization and give them a pathway to get to somebody in a short amount of time. Because usually when something's happened, we want to get to them within 24 hours or less. And I think that's the integrated piece that I believe your organization, with our organizations, could do, is meet them where they are sooner.
Thank you. I know we recently were working on a memorandum of understanding with Oklahoma, so we can share resources. We do some train the trainers on the programs we have, so that you can deliver them. And then we're just asking for data back, which is helping us with our grant processes. So, and we have several MOUs with lots of organizations. Illinois is another one of those that has supported that effort. So thank you for those. But yeah, any ways we can support that is really good. So here's another curveball here for you. What do you think the next generation of firefighter looks like in the next 5 years? What do you project out? This is one I didn't prepare you for, so I see the wheels are turning. So 5 years from now, where do you think we should be really focusing on to prepare for that 5 years from now, where the firefighter needs to be? And maybe we're already doing those things. So,
Well, they're coming into us with a higher understanding, again, of the risks of the job. So we just need to reinforce that with them. And I think there's the new challenges. What are the new things down the road that we weren't aware of? So with the lithium-ion batteries, we have a lot of departments that have only one set of bunker gear. When they do a lithium-ion battery call, that gear is ruined. And so how do we find the funding to help them get the other gear, new gear? So as technology changes, we have to keep up with how that's going to impact the lives of the firefighters we're training and what we can do to help. I think this whole issue really has to be a partnership too with those that have the purse strings, because the only way we're going to get the tools that we need to make sure everybody stays safe is if there's the funding, and we know funding is becoming more and more of an issue. So I think that's the area where we really got to look how we can use the gear differently.
I think we also have to accept that I personally think the next generation, or the next 5-10 years of firefighters are going to embrace that immersive learning and the simulation type training far more than we ever realized, and it's going to come a lot quicker than we think, because as you said, they understand it, they know, and they realize that I've been playing video games that are so realistic my entire life. I can do a lot of this and understand it better through virtual reality or immersive learning, and then smaller snippets of actual hands-on, in the burn building or something like that. And we have to be ready for that, because they're going to be ready for it long before we are in the training world.
I think the challenge for the training directors is to keep up. I'm already seeing it in my shop with compression. I call it compression. Technology is moving, everything is renewed in 3 years or less, and most of us are changing our curriculum every 5 years with the standard. So the standard is already out of date behind what the new skill is, what the new trend is, and the challenge for us is how are we going to meet it? How are we going to put our curriculum development systems into a shape? And maybe it's AI, maybe it's different forms of technology, so we can implement those new systems faster. We have to get quicker. We have to get at least 3-year turnaround instead of 5. And most of us are so short-staffed, that's going to be a big challenge on how we address that. because we struggle to keep up and get the message out to all of the state. You know, even I'm a small state population-wise, and for us to get it out to my 15,000 firefighters is, you know, it's a task in itself. It takes us a year to get it across the state. And so as the larger populations deal with that, and how are you going to get that technology, those skill set, as it comes out to those individuals? And then, you know, it's the old advantage, you know, where you have the firefighter with the big sack. I got hazmat, I got rescue, I've got all these different deals, and they're so technical, and the gear for the rescue pieces are very, very expensive, and it's changing. You know, we went from rack bars to clutches, and now everybody's got to have a clutch. You got to know how to use a clutch. And then you've got intrinsically safe clutches, and you've got all these different technological things, and we're all tight for money. We need to have the newest, latest equipment. They may or may not have them in the field, so you got to teach some old, you got to teach some new, and try to get them to the best point where they can actually respond safely to something. And so I think as we grow and move, the way we meet that challenge is what's going to define us as state training directors.
I'm running out of time, so I've got one more question that you're not prepared for. But I would like for you to share with us your most rewarding moment as a fire service instructor.
We bought a draft commander a couple of years ago. We focus a lot on the volunteer departments that do not get certified, and we want to make sure that they have the skills that they need. We went to a small town, trained them up in water, hose management, water pressures, not just set it to 200 or 120 and go. And the next week they had their first room and contents fire safe, where they didn't burn the whole building down. So what we do is important. They did it safely. They were able to get it done. And it was just 1 4-hour training of teaching them how to flow water. It was amazing.
Awesome.
Mine was probably several years ago. I had done a keynote speech at a Firefighters Association conference in a neighboring province. Didn't know a whole lot of the people there. It was, you know, 5 or 6 hours away, but you know, a little snippets of, you know, experience through my time in the fire service and training, and sort of how I landed there after, at that point, it was about 20-ish years in the volunteer service and then at the academy as well. And almost a year after that keynote, I was walking through Montreal airport, and this guy came over and he tapped me on the shoulder and he said, "You're John Cunningham." Yeah. He says, "I was at your keynote at the New Brunswick Fire Chiefs, and I remember you saying these things, and they really resonated with me, and I started taking them back to my department." And that's when you kind of realize, well, I actually did reach somebody. They didn't just sleep through my little presentation, and that meant a lot. You know, for somebody to remember a year later what your keynote was. That's great.
Mine's a little different. I have the privilege of overseeing a bunch of passionate people. And then last year we started a collection of saves. And we received about 10 documented stories of training that we provided throughout Oklahoma that they were saves. Saves in swift water, saves in grain, saves in fire, and the different aspects we teach. And it's like, all of a sudden it resonated with me. We have impact. Because we get so caught up in the minutia of what we do as directors that, you know, I don't teach much anymore. I have a grants class, and yeah, it's rewarding to see that they're getting money, but it's not the same as having a documented save. You know what I mean? As we go through on that. So I think that was rewarding to say, you know, you got the right person doing the right things, teaching the right things in those programs.
Thank you. Thanks very much. Thank you to the panel. Fantastic job. Thanks for your attention, Ken. I will turn it back over to you for any closing comments you may have. Thank you for all that you do and all the fire lives you're saving.